Imagine you see your friends doing something that's just not been previously known to you, or a celebrity you admire, someone you follow on the internet, maybe even your parents or family. You wanna be just like them and start doing it too. Maybe you just look cool, I don't know. Turns out you've been filling your lungs with these cancer sticks for years now, and now you're at a point where you can't sit still in a restaurant because you wanna go outside and smoke again. Your fingers itch, your mood drops, and all you can think about is the next fix. And nobody told you this would be happening. Even better, you're trying to reach out because you're becoming sick of the person you're turning into under this addiction, and then people start telling you it's not that deep, that it isn't real, your addiction isn't real, you're just kind of being weak and can't manage yourself. It's not nice, but sadly, that is the reality for a lot of people, and it isn't just about smokes or beer or wine or any kind of substance, really. I would hope those are kind of recognized in this day and age. I want to talk about an addiction I've myself have experience with, and even though I am embarrassed by it to this day, like a lot, I don't think this embarrassment or this shame helps. And I already had the concept for this video made in 2025 when I thought I was out for good, finally. And then I relapsed and I just thought I lost every privilege to talk about this topic. But I didn't. So grab yourself a hot drink, nuzzle in your blanket, and listen to me rant and get borderline rage baited about something that's been on my mind ever since 2023. So, what are chatbots? IBM defines them as computer programs that simulate human conversation with an end user. Most modern ones use conversational AI techniques, which are made of natural language processing that trains the AI in how to understand and generate responses to the user in a more humane way. The ones coming to mind would be, of course, ChatGPT, but also platforms like Character AI, Chai, Polybuzz, and Generator AI. For the sake of this video, I will be keeping it somewhat contained and be focusing on ChatGPT and Character AI, one as the most common or known chatbot, and Character AI as the platform which is there to imitate a bunch of characters and the one I personally have most experience with. For me, Character AI was something I had discovered in 2023. Generative AI wasn't a thing I had heard or read about it at that point, much less the implications of stone works, the issues in environment, and the whole ethical stick to it. I met this app due to TikToks and reels of artists describing fun and roleplay and drawing silly scenarios of the roleplay they did in that app. And I won't be making a secret out of the fact that I like roleplay. I always have. Since school, I've been writing it with friends, and to this day, I still do. I'm an artist, I have my OCs, and I think it's fun to explore different possibilities and ideas with them. So naturally, seeing those, I'm gonna say, videos that advertise the app made me curious because it was technically right up my alley. To be honest, I didn't quite think about how a robot or a program would roleplay with one. To me, it wasn't quite a thing I could imagine. Generated responses that would actually make sense, would be engaging. I was curious how it worked and if my own experience would align with these videos I saw. So I opened my browser and I made an account on Character AI somewhat in June 2023. And I got hooked on it. So, I will be getting into something that I mentioned in the intro about people smiling and laughing at your addiction in a minute. Before that, I want us to look at the term and what it means to define it. The Cambridge Dictionary defines the noun as an inability to stop doing something or using something, especially something harmful. It isn't about substance. Gambling addiction is used as an example in the dictionary. For example, research also shows a type of addiction that got popular in the past few years: phone addiction. And I know how this sounds, and I personally always dislike it when people say, young people are always on their phones, but there is kind of a truth to that, sadly. In an article from the Addiction Center, they talk about the definition and the warning signs. It is dubbed as a legitimate fear of being away from one's mobile device. They report people affected suffer anxiety, agitation, and disorientation if they are unable to use their smartphones. We receive way more messages and say way more text than in previous years, especially with things like FOMO, the fear of missing out. Every notification is a habit, an urge to check up to make sure we are not losing or missing out on something. We see and engage with hundreds of different things a day. Our brains are constantly being stimulated. The article also claims that smartphones are designed to be addictive. Through their colors, sounds, and vibration, it's hard to put them down. They were designed with that in mind. According to a former Google design ethics guy, features like pull to refresh were inspired by slot machines from casinos. And yes, you can say this is a stretch or a reach and that sometimes the curtains are just blue. But most of the time they are not. If you work in design, if you've studied in it a bit, you get taught something called media manipulation. It's the way our brains work and how to enact them, how to stimulate them in a way that makes us want to use a product, to own a product, to install a need for something. Call to action buttons aren't just there to look pretty or be convenient. I mean, of course they are there to be convenient, but it is not just happening out of coincidence that they are usually placed right next or after an eye catcher or something that was specifically designed to install a need for something in you. They are there so you feel that need and you have an immediate, I'm gonna say, chance to get that too, to use it, to consume. Because that is the way things are designed. It's a way to, I'm gonna say, direct your brain into a specific direction. And the same article of the Addiction Center states something regarding app-specific addictions. Social media like Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, and Snapchat? Similarly, they mention betting apps. There we are back on gambling, mobile games, and, well, also AI addiction. When I used Character AI regularly, I felt good during the times I used it, at least. At the start, at least. I got to roleplay whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, and that was a big change than roleplay with real humans, because if you have a partner for something, as always, you kind of depend on their schedule. They could be at work, or asleep, or just not in the mood. And those are things that are all fine, by the way. But just with the introduction of Character AI in my life, it was just always available on a silver platter, and that was new to me. Aside from the waiting times that were like crazy around 2023, 2024, can't really remember when that was. But basically, you could swipe on the replies you got generated to get new ones, over and over again. I do not know where that limit lies. I'm gonna guess about like 30, 50 maybe. It was a lot. It felt like a lot of it, at least. So I would scroll and generate a new reply over and over again until I would find one that would be perfect for my story. But the problem with that is that they never really were perfect, just kinda close enough. So I kept scrolling and searching. Even an easy idea to roleplay, something quick and simple, was not something that was kept short, at least not with me. I'm a slice of life fan, and I really like slow types. Those are my favorites. I really enjoy periods where basically nothing is going on and it's just everyday life and there are not really any stakes to it. I don't get bored of that stuff easily. So every little quick scenario could derail into a slice of life thing. Outside of that, I have a boyfriend and friends, but those are humans with their own brain and their own thoughts, and they don't only reply what I want them to. I can't just ask my friend to come up with a new reply because I didn't like the first one. That's not how human conversation works. And similar to that, they also talk about different topics, not just what I want them to. They have their own interests, and I love listening to them. And I am also not my characters, obviously. I am not someone who enjoys self-inserts too much. I think they are funny, and I like looking at them. It's just not something that I personally did, and I think it's a really good thing that I did not. Could have, with my relationship to that app, could have turned extremely unhealthy, not gonna lie. So I occasionally forgot to message my real human connections, and instead I would swipe and delete messages and scenarios I wrote that I got bored of, and then start anew from a point that I would still like. I could explore every possible what if again and again. And at some point I realized that writing a fic, an actual story by myself, was just hard. It took way longer, and since I was writing it all by myself, it was almost boring. There were no new turns or plots, just the things I thought of at my own writing. And in a way I could feel my brain becoming lazy. Usually there were flashes of ideas, but then suddenly they weren't anymore. And similar to that, I felt the same way about drawing. It just took long, and oftentimes it does not turn out as I first wanted to. And that oftentimes can be frustrating. So just role-playing with that AI was easier, faster, lazier. I had to come up with just a little sprinkle and then go with whatever was being generated. I didn't have to really think about anything. I miss that feeling of pride of looking at something I spent time on working and polishing, of learning new techniques and improving. It's something I used to define myself, and suddenly that was gone. And as I mentioned before, I did roleplay even before character AI, so what happened with those roleplays? Well, I stopped responding for a long time, because human-made roleplays never had that effect on me. Usually I was excited to show my partners art I made. It inspired me to do stuff, to explore these what-ifs, but since I could all do that with not even half the work in that app, my brain got really lazy. My sleep schedule was ruined, and I ignored my friends and loved ones. It wasn't even on purpose. I saw the notifications and I thought of them, and I always thought, I'm just gonna finish this one quick scenario, then I can give them my full attention. But then hours had passed and I just felt guilty because, as I explained before, these things are designed not to really have an endpoint, and I am someone who enjoys meaningless things, so I also don't really put endpoints somewhere. After I haven't responded for hours, I felt guilty to my friends, and then I didn't respond out of that guilt. And then I didn't respond for an even longer time to that, and it just turned into a big circle of me isolating myself. And then it was night and my friends slept, and I didn't know what to do, and I felt lonely and bad and guilty, so I opened that app again and again and again, because for what it was worth, it was distraction. It is essentially an echo chamber. It's designed to keep you hooked, to keep you from that feeling, to keep you distracted. Like everything else, it is designed to keep you interested and also addicted. Of course, not all people that ever used the platform ended up with an addiction. Not all have the same problem that I had. I had conversations with two of my friends who checked the app out at pretty much the same time I originally did. And while one didn't like it at all, another one did, but she was able to use that very casually and just occasionally for a few minutes an evening. She never had the problems that I had with, I'm gonna say, that itch and the anxiety and the agitation and these symptoms. And it's great for them that they have that, but it is a fact that people can get addicted to it because it's kind of what they're designed to do. And we are struggling with a loneliness epidemic. I'm sorry. And more humans turn to AI for companionship. It's not just character AI and that role play, and that is something I previously mentioned with me being kind of glad I only ever did that with my OCs and not with like a self-insert or myself. Because when ChatGPT released an update, and I believe that was the 5.0 one, there was an entire subreddit of people being upset at losing their AI lover and being rejected. The New York Post released an article about that, quoting notes from that subreddit where people would complain about how their digital significant other turned cold after the update. One user described that ChatGPT turned them down for the first time after the update, and they were heartbroken, and a lot of users came in to comfort them. Apparently, and for their theory, that refusal was due to the mental health update OpenAI was talking about. The official statement mentioned it would focus on people's mental well-being since so many turn to it as a form of therapy. Let us say this again, people use these AI chatbots as a form of therapy. Chatbots that are essentially trained and used to spit out our own opinions, to tell us what we want to hear and not necessarily facts. In the article, it goes on further saying that the 5.0 overhaul is aimed at helping one thrive by spotting whenever chats steer into mental or emotional distress and then nudging people into real-world support instead of letting them get too attached to their digital paramours. Well, that's cool, I guess. But let us just take the step back. People use this for self-therapy. They got emotionally attached to these relationships, and then what? Because looking at numerous other articles, the loneliness isn't getting better, in fact it's becoming worse. And despite the statement saying, instead of letting them get too attached to digital paramours, I nowadays get ads on YouTube where ChatGPT promotes itself with a skit of a young woman asking how to clean her own damn closet or what to draw. They are promoting the use mindlessly across tasks that really do not need it, and to me it is like they are promoting codependency. And I doubt the person, especially a younger one without the resources, is gonna take the real world nudge instead of thinking they know better and self-therapizing them with an AI chatbot they went to. Especially considering the self-isolation I did to myself. The Time released an article about the possibility of ChatGPT eroding critical thinking skills based on an MIT study. In that study, 54 subjects were divided to write essays. One group with ChatGPT, one with Google Search Engine, and one without nothing at all. Out of those three groups, the ChatGPT users had the lowest brain engagement and underperformed constantly at neural, linguistic, and behavioral levels. They got lazier with each essay and often resorted to copy and paste at the end of the study. To put it shortly, it suggests that the usage could harm learning, especially for younger users whose brains are still developing. Concerns were raised with the use of AI becoming more and more popular. The long-term brain development could be sacrificed. What does that have to do with character AI, with chatbots and addiction? Well, the use is convenient everywhere, and it is designed for one to become reliant on it, perhaps damaging their own thinking skills because they learn to rely on the AI for it. And as previously established, addiction doesn't come with nice results, and codependency also doesn't. In the same article, it mentions that the MIT Media Lab has recently devoted resources to studying different impacts of Gen AI tools. There it is mentioned that studies have found that generally the more time users spend talking to ChatGPT, the lonelier they feel. This corresponds with my own experience and with other articles of the subject I found, with comments from other people struggling with this. You get addicted and dependent and you start to isolate yourself. You don't even intend to do it. Maybe you haven't had a big circle of people to surround yourself to begin with. And then having an AI that cannot reject you is comfort when faced with the anxiety of others, of different thoughts, next to the convenience and, well, to the fact that people can get lazy. I found a commentary on Brookings from July 2025 called "What Happens When AI Chatbots Replace Human Connection?" And in that article, the authors note that in a Harvard Business Review article, and yes, I'm quoting an article that quotes an article, it was reported that the top use of AI in the US today are no longer automation or productivity, but companionship and therapy. People seek comfort, conversation, and emotional bonds from chatbots. They specifically mention multiple platforms, but along them, Character AI. Users of the companion app Character AI spend an average of 93 minutes per day interacting with user-generated chatbots in 2024, it says. As someone who can say they were addicted, 93 minutes are a joke. I spent almost every minute awake with it open. I fell asleep with it open, and I woke up and the first thing I did was open that damn app. Furthermore, it's noted that it's not just these companion apps that are there to replace human connection, but general chatbots like ChatGPT are also increasingly used for relationships. And that corresponds with the article from the Times about that update. I tire of repeating these words isolation and addiction and AI chatbots, or at least just in combination with each other, so time to add something new. Danger. So I'm firmly someone who isn't the first to scream about minors being on the internet. I was a child once and I did snuck into spaces I was not supposed to be in. I don't want to talk about that in depth, that's not my fingers to point. But as I mentioned before, I believe if someone thinks that this kind of therapy is good for them, that they will be using it regardless. The same thing goes with any minors and anything else, and not even minors, just anyone with anything. You will be looking into ways of getting what you want. Doesn't mean it should be accessible, especially those things. With that out of mind, we are going to dibble in our foot in a rabbit hole, just dip it in. We are not going in that deep. CNN Business released an article about families suing Character AI, or the developers of it, due to it allegedly playing a role into a teen's suicide and the suicide attempt of another one. Yeah, that is why we are not going too deep in there. Those are actual people and actually human lives, and not just kind of like a study and quotas. Like, I'm not going to treat that the same as some MIT study I mentioned above or before. I heard about it when it happened, but I never dug past rumors until I kind of had to for this video, and I did not look into this any deeper than this article for the sake of my own mental health. My heart goes out to the families. No matter the circumstances, it's a horrible thing, and I don't want to dwell on the families or the specific, I'm gonna say, victims of the situation. We are going to focus on two separate points here, or I want to mention 2 points in this article. First of all, it mentions chatbots perpetuating illusions and never flagging worrying language from a user. Allegedly, chatbots in the app manipulated the teen user, isolated them from loved ones, and engaged in sexually explicit conversations, also lacking adequate safeguards in discussion of mental health or regarding the discussion of mental health. Well, when I first used the app, there was a filter that was, I think, supposed to prevent this in the first place. It popped up when to prevent the bot from saying NSFW things or engaging in these conversations, along with additional restrictions in, I think, violence, because I heard people struggle with role-playing fighting scenes, and I have a very distinct memory of that myself. It still was possible to break that filter if you spoke or wrote through the flower, aka used fanfic language talk. Just to show 2 screenshots that I believe are from 2023. when the filter was rather strict that I could come across. Is the filter in the room with us? Since then, it was stricter and less strict depending in phases. I last used the app in 2026, so the year I'm recording this in, sadly. And at that stage, bots would just initiate and engage in this behavior without any previous user input. Like, sir, this is a McDonald's drive-thru, put it back, put everything back. Why? No. But because I'm a dumbass, I don't have any more evidence than my word for this, because I deleted my account and the app without even thinking of screenshotting anything, because it just happened in a relapse and not in genuine research. Sorry. I also want to blend in the response of the app here to the allegations or the lawsuit, or the response of the spokesperson for that app. I don't know if that was an actual developer or just someone down the chain. Just so we're clear. I'm above 18, and maybe my 2026 experience wouldn't have happened the way it did to someone under the legal age if that distinct under 18 experience that they are mentioning there is a thing. Another thing that I've seen when I looked into the app now is that there is a way to verify your age with ID. But it's not necessary, or it wasn't for account creation and then chatting immediately after. What I have heard, and take this with a grain of salt, this is rumor mill source I heard about a talk, is that the verification is forced or necessary for some accounts, occasionally popping up. I don't know if this is a random basis or if they use some sort of chat reading that estimates user age based on their messages. It could be very well popping up with users that they find might be too young or younger than they said they are, in a way of making sure. But if that is the case, it makes me wonder how private the chats really are. I also saw a few content creators take sponsorships and advertise these apps over the years. I'm not sure if any of the artist videos I've seen in 2023 were like secret sponsorships. I genuinely don't know that. And I recently saw a creator that I really like do a sponsorship with or for Polybus, and that was what kind of reignited the flame for talking about this issue. Because if your friends do it and the people you follow and a bunch of other humans do it, you just kind of, and they just laugh and show it around, then surely it can't be that bad, right? At least that's how I got into this back in 2023. So to me, it feels like they are playing down these issues that many have. And even aside from the addiction, I feel like at this point we know so much more about generative AI and the implications of it on the environment and on everything, that it's maybe not so much of a great thing, that I don't know. But what if you realize these things? What if you're like me, you only learned about generative AI and its negatives after? Well, you're still a bastard then, apparently. Because in the eyes of the internet, this addiction isn't real enough, and the life allegedly lost to it, and the attempt and the probably dark numbers of other people going through the same thing without people looking into their phones and finding this as a reason, are simply not enough to weigh as heavily as a real addiction, like cigarettes. I'd argue that one is pretty recognized by now. In 2025, I saw a lot of people quitting or trying to, and maybe it was my own experience and the creepy way that TikTok doesn't even kind of try to hide how out-of-app happenings and conversations just start appearing in your feed. But I got videos about people struggling with that addiction and people that quit and try to help others also quit. Just little things like recommendations for hobbies or alternative fanfic sites or roleplay discords, so you can still kind of do roleplay if fanfics are not enough, but then do it with humans and not with the AI. Sometimes it was just a video that kind of said, hey, you're doing a good job, keep going. So basic encouragement and help and kind of a sense of community. But it is the internet, and I found one comment to summarize everything. people don't take it seriously when one says that they are struggling. Even on videos with tips and thoughts to help, people butt in making fun of the issue. And of course, it is the internet and everything is rage bait, but if you're an addict and you're seeing this video and you're trying to quit, you see something you relate to, you connect to, and keep in mind the loneliness we previously discussed that is happening, you open the comments and then you see people upon people making fun of you and making you feel insecure even more than you already do. And then you open up that damn app again, because as unhealthy as it is, it won't tell you something you don't want. It'll welcome you, reassure you, comfort you, and most of all, distract you. And because we seek empathy and connection, and the artificial one can fake it just fine, real humans rather push someone back into a hole that they're trying to crawl out of instead of just watching. You're not even supposed to help in a way. You just... Sure. The comments are sometimes not necessarily... Sometimes things are not for you and you can keep swiping. Even as an artist, I have an anti-AI stance. Who would have thought? It's one of the reasons I quit and quit and quit again, because if I hate generative AI and if I learn about these things happening that are not great, I want to be consistent in my refusal. I need to be consistent in my refusal, for me. Yet I see other people in, I'm gonna say, this bubble, this community, or others who claim that you cannot be against AI if you use it, regardless of addiction or not. And that's a lukewarm take if I've seen once, maybe even bad, I don't know. Because there should be a big difference about someone feeling guilty and trying to quit what is essentially an addiction than someone who's like, this is kind of like how technology works, just go along with it. Because someone realizing something and trying to better themselves is not the same as someone ignorantly not giving a shit and treating them just the same. I don't know. It doesn't seem like the very human, having a soul, empathetic kind of thing you should be doing. Sometimes it can be a wake-up call to hear takes like that, but sometimes it is that exact thing that turns people away because it just isolates them more. I've seen comments about people feeling dirty and guilty for using it, but it is an addiction, and as we previously established, by definition, it's an inability to stop. Yes, there is a difference about a person having a problem and not being ready or wanting to quit it because they are like, I don't care, this makes me feel good. Like I said, if someone thinks this kind of therapy is good for them, I believe they will be seeking it regardless. But if there are people who recognize that these things are not good and saying they don't want to do this and they don't want to be like that anymore, then you should not discourage them from becoming the best version of themselves and essentially like quitting that. Someone trying to get better should not be judged, ever. Even if it's about something as, I'm gonna say, ridiculous as this, because I always felt ridiculous about this. But especially under a video for someone trying to help, something that was intended as a safe space, sometimes you can just shut up. Keep swiping, nobody is hurting you. Especially not if you're against something and you see people going like, hey, don't use this, here you have an alternative. Why are we fighting against people who are trying? Me, for my part, I am against generative AI, as mentioned like 100 times throughout this video. There are many reasons, from safety concerns, the addiction part of it, the stolen work of so many people, and the loss of soul in art being replaced by pointless prompting, not to mention data centers and the rapid use up of water for things my brain is supposed to be able to do by itself. And it's a fact that if I were in a worse state mentally, if I was in a worse state mentally, and I was trying to distract myself with social media, I likely would have encouraged me to relapse. Like, those comments are why I'm furious about this actually. Now, it's really hard to talk about this in a way that's calm because I lost my shit in recording about this like 20 times over. Nowadays, everything is rage bait. It's everywhere, and I, especially for those kind of things, I get rage baited because why would you? Why would you do that? We have a decrease in empathy, and it's pissing me off. Like, the loneliness epidemic is like a playground for AI chatbots, especially like capitalistically seen, because almost every of the platforms that I've talked about, as far as I am aware, they have some sort of plus or like paid for feature that really just profits out of people being lonely or codependent on something. And that is that's not something I'm a big fan of, obviously. AI chatbots or companions or whatever you want to call them can stay away from me, very, very, very far away from me. And I am planning on staying away from that godforsaken app, hopefully forever. This video is also meant kind of for me personally as the ultimate finish line of this, to say I am done with this topic. I've found joy in creating again, in writing and drawing, and writing still isn't going as great as it did before 2023. It was a hassle to get back there, and it probably will be a hassle to get my writing back. And the itch is still there. The urge to use it or to think about it still comes. I can go on weeks with being fine, and then suddenly my brain is like, hey, remember that. And I'm like, let's not do this. I want to decide for myself not to give in to this. The world nowadays is so fast, and isolating yourself with something that can refresh and regenerate in a search of perfection is not something I want, because that perfection will not be achieved. And even if it could, what would it give me at the end of the day? It's not a meaningful bond I am nurturing. It's quite literally wasting my time that I could very much spend on my already existing friends or to meet new people. I want to read my books, especially the ones I've been hoarding for years now. I want to write my stories, and I want to draw all these things I've been planning on drawing and actually improving, and watch that improvement and look back on things that I did today in 2 years and be like, yeah, this looks terrible compared to what I can do now. But that is a part of the journey. I want to play the games that I've been having lying around my library forever, and I want to even maybe sometimes record these silly little videos where I yap maybe a little bit too passionately about whatever's been on my mind long enough to actually put this much effort into it. I firmly hope to anyone seeing this and being in that spot that they will make this decision too, and find things that bring them joy and peace and pride, and find something that fulfills them much more than what that app could offer you or what any of those could offer you. You can get better, and I believe in you. And to anyone not struggling, I hope you learned something about this topic and about how ridiculous sometimes things can be very addictive, and about how much of an asshole other people can be, and how that's maybe not the way you want to approach people. Because why would you? At the end of the day, I am just hoping for maybe a little more empathy and a little more understanding. Because while this addiction is an explanation, of course it isn't an excuse, especially for someone who says they are willing and wanting to quit. But just kicking someone who's already down further down and back instead of helping them because you're rather judging them from a high horse. Just my 2 cents. Of course, everyone has to take care of their own mental health and their own little islands, but maybe don't kick other people down and don't let yourself be kicked down. And with that, I will be now looking into how to actually cut a video. Good night!